What did Mesopotamian society look like? A stratified society. According to tradition, for which queen were the Hanging Gardens of Babylon built? Amatis. What is the name of the river that gave birth to Egyptian civilization? The Nile River. Of which empire was Cleopatra the last queen? The Ptolemaic Kingdom. What is the sacred text that deals with the afterlife in ancient Egypt? The Book of the Dead. What was the main building material used in the Indus civilization? Baked bricks. What was the main reason Emperor Qin Shi Huang built the Great Wall? To defend against invasions by nomadic tribes from the north. In the Code of Hammurabi, what principle is expressed by the phrase, an eye for an eye, meaning punishment equal to the injury? The law of retaliation. Why did Babylonia collapse? Invasion by the Persian Empire. On what material was the Code of Hammurabi inscribed? A basalt stone stele. In Assyrian religious ceremonies, what were the most important rituals? Sacrifices and offerings. How did Assyrian kings record their wars? Through reliefs and clay tablet records. What weapons did Assyria use when attacking fortified cities? Siege towers and battering rams. Which island near Crete is thought to have experienced a massive volcanic eruption? The Santorini, Thera, volcanic eruption. Which epic tells the story of Odysseus's 10-year journey after the Trojan War? Odyssey. What symbol did the Minoan civilization use to present royal power as sacred? The double axe, Labrys. What was the name of the Trojan king who fought against the Mycenaean army in the Trojan War? Priam. Besides agriculture and trade, what industry was regarded as an economically important activity in the Mycenaean civilization? Bronze production. What distinctive artistic style of the Mycenaean civilization was influenced by the Minoan civilization? Minoan-style frescoes. What was the main reason the Mycenaean civilization was able to maintain a militarily powerful kingdom? A strong military organization and massive fortification walls. Which people are thought to have hastened the onset of the Greek Dark Age? The Doryites. Which ancient Greek city prospered through powerful maritime trade? Corinth. Who was the legendary lawgiver credited with organizing the laws and social structure of Sparta? Lycurgus. In Olympia, which temple was dedicated to the king of the gods? The Temple of Zeus. Which deity, the earth goddess, is known as the mother of the Olympian gods? Gea. In Greek mythology, who was the god of the sky and the first king of the Titans? Uranus. Which ancient Greek tragedian wrote Medea? Euripides. Which ancient Greek tragedian wrote Oedipus Rex? Sophocles. Which school of ancient Greek philosophy emphasized living according to the laws of nature? The Stoic school. Which twin brothers in mythology were known as Castor and Pollux? The Dioscuri. Which temple in ancient Athens was dedicated to the goddess Athena and became a symbol of the city? The Parthenon Temple. Which monster with a head of snakes was said to turn anyone who looked at her into stone? Medusa. In ancient Greece, which important city-state is associated with the legend of the Sphinx? Thebes. What is the name of the wars fought in the 5th century BCE between the Greek city-states and the Persian Empire? The Greco-Persian Wars. Which philosopher claimed that the basic constituents of the world are atoms? Democritus. What was the name of the school that considered truth to be relative and placed great importance on rhetoric? The Sophist school. Which philosopher of the Epicurean school regarded pleasure as the highest good? Epicurus. What is the name of Plato's concept of a transcendent and perfect form or reality? The form of the good. Which branch of philosophy did Aristotle develop to investigate the essence of being? Metaphysics. What was the name of the educational institution founded by Aristotle? The Lyceum. What is the Socratic method of seeking truth through questioning and refutation? The Socratic method. In ancient Greece, what word was used to refer to a city-state? Polis. What system in Athens allowed citizens to decide laws and policies directly? Direct democracy. In Athens, what was the term for resident foreigners who did not possess citizenship? Metoic. In Athens, what was the square where citizens held public discussions and debates? The public square, or agora. What was the alliance formed by the Greek city-states under the leadership of Athens? The Delian League. What was the reason the Athenian army suffered a crushing defeat in the Sicilian expedition? Lack of strategy and supply problems. Why did Sparta play a decisive role in the Battle of Plataea? The strong defense of its hoplite heavy infantry. What was the capital of the Persian Empire built by Darius I? Persepolis. What was the major canal that the Persian Empire expanded to facilitate trade between the Mediterranean and India? The Suez Canal. What script did nobles and royalty use officially in the Persian Empire? Cuneiform script. What was one of the main factors in the collapse of the Hittite Empire? Invasions by the Sea Peoples. What was a characteristic of the Hittite law code? Relatively lenient punishments. Which Egyptian king fought the Hittites at the Battle of Kadesh? Ramses II. What strategic weapon did the Hittites use in their wars with Egypt? Light chariots. Why was Carthage unable to provide sufficient support while Hannibal was attacking Rome? Because of political divisions and financial shortages. Which battle did the Egyptian king Ramses II claim as a victory, even though he had actually failed there? The Battle of Kadesh. What are the three ethical practices that believers must follow according to the moral principles of Zoroastrianism? Good words, good thoughts, and good deeds. Which kingdom did Cyrus II conquer to expand his empire? The Kingdom of Babylon. In which book of the Bible is it recorded that Cyrus II freed the Jews? The Book of Ezra. Which city served as an imperial capital for Cyrus II's empire? Pasargadae. How large was the army that vanished when Cambyses II sent it on an expedition to the Temple of Amun? 50,000 men. What happened to the empire of Alexander the Great after his death? It was divided among his successors. In what year did Alexander the Great begin his Persian campaign? Year 334 BC. Before fighting Darius III during his Persian campaign, how did Alexander the Great treat Darius' family? He honored and protected them as royalty. What mixed cultural policy did Alexander the Great adopt in the regions he conquered? A Greco-Persian fusion policy. In which regions did Gandharan art flourish? In what is now Pakistan and Afghanistan? In which city were the Olympic Games first held in ancient Greece? Olympia. By which empire were the Hebrews taken into the Babylonian captivity? The Neo-Babylonian Empire. What was the series of wars in which Carthage and Rome fought each other? The Punic Wars. Who was the principal god of Carthage to whom children were offered as sacrifices? Baal Hammon. In which battle did the Roman army finally defeat Hannibal? Zama. What did Hannibal swear to his father when he was a child? That he would take lifelong revenge on Rome. Which city did Hannibal gravely threaten but never succeed in capturing? Rome. What was the famous gate that formed part of the walls of Babylon? Ishtar Gate. By what title is Herodotus often called? The father of history. What was the main distinguishing feature of the Theban phalanx formation? A strengthened left flank. What was one of the punishments suffered by persecuted Christians in the Roman amphitheaters? They were thrown to wild beasts. Which meal did Romans consider the most important meal of the day? The evening meal, cena. In the Roman Republic and early empire, which metal coin was the most common? Bronze. During a triumph, what animals pulled the chariot on which the general rode? Four white horses. What tactic did Roman legions use to maintain mobility in battle? The manipular tactic. Although the Eastern Roman Empire continued after the fall of the Western Roman Empire, by what other name is this empire known? The Byzantine Empire. In the early Roman Empire, emperors were regarded as sacred beings and were worshipped after death as what kind of god? Divus. Who were the two most famous leaders among those who orchestrated the assassination of Julius Caesar? Brutus and Cassius. In the Roman Republic, which office held absolute power for 6 months in times of emergency? The dictatorship. During the Roman Republic, which class of people served as soldiers? Roman citizens. The Seleucid dynasty was founded by a successor of which famous conqueror? Alexander the Great. Who was one of the most powerful kings of the Seleucid dynasty, who fought wars against the Egyptian Ptolemaic dynasty? Antiochus the Phud. Who was the representative scholar of the Ptolemaic period who advocated a geocentric model of the universe? Claudius Ptolemy. What style did Caesar maintain to conceal his insecurity about his appearance? Combed forward hair and a laurel wreath. What was the name of the Germanic king who brought down the Western Roman Empire? Odoacer. In the feudal system, what did the king grant to the nobles? Land, or fiefs. Could peasants marry without their lord's permission? No. During the Renaissance, which culture was mainly rediscovered and appreciated? Greek and Roman culture. Who was a painter who represents the Renaissance era? Leonardo da Vinci. Which scientist was active during the Renaissance? Galilei. How were goods mainly produced before the Industrial Revolution? By handcraft, or cottage industry. What positive effect did the Industrial Revolution have on everyday life? Goods became more abundant. Who emerged as a new social class after the Industrial Revolution? Capitalists, or the bourgeoisie. Who was a representative thinker in ancient China? Confucius. What attitude toward life did Laozi place importance on? Non-action and conforming to nature. In ancient Egypt, what was the pharaoh regarded as? A representative of the gods. What was the name of the law code created by King Hammurabi? The Code of Hammurabi. Who was the leader in Athens who developed democracy? Pericles. What kind of power did ancient kings generally possess? Absolute power. Why did people in the Renaissance seek to study ancient culture again? To better understand human beings and the world. What value is expressed in Michelangelo's statue of David? The ideal beauty of the human being. What was one impact of the Industrial Revolution on art? It encouraged the depiction of realistic subjects. Why did King Ashoka of India convert to Buddhism after the war? Because of remorse over the taking of life. For solving what kind of social problems can Lao Tzu's idea of non-action in accordance with nature be helpful? Easing competition and conflict. What limitations did Pericles' democracy have? Slaves and women were excluded. Why did Roman emperors pretend to respect the Senate? To secure political legitimacy. Which religion began in India and follows the teachings of Buddha? Buddhism. During World War II, there was a large-scale massacre targeting Jews. What is this event called? The Holocaust. During World War II, what slogan did Japan put forward when occupying territories across Asia? The concept of a Greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere. During World War II, on which side did Italy fight? On the side of Germany. What was a representative system established to improve workers' treatment? Social welfare systems. Why did social problems become more conspicuous after the Industrial Revolution? Because of urbanization and the spread of information. According to Confucius, what qualities should an ideal ruler possess? Benevolence and wisdom. Which Italian city is famous for its Leaning Tower? Pisa. What was the principal writing system of the Mesopotamian civilization? Cuneiform script. In the Roman Republic, what law was created to help resolve conflicts between patricians and plebeians? The Law of the 12 Tables. During the era of Viking activity, what type of ship struck fear into Europe? The longship. After the Reformation, what was a representative Protestant denomination that emerged? Lutheranism. During the French Revolution, What was the period of terror led by Maximilien Robespierre called? The Jacobin Reign of Terror. What were the royal tombs built by the ancient Egyptians in the belief in an afterlife called? Pyramids. In which city was the ceremony reviving the Western Roman imperial coronation, held by Charlemagne of the Frankish kingdom, conducted? Roma. What contributed to the active influx of Eastern goods and culture into Europe after the Crusades? Trade. Who was the figure that, through the Reformation, established a new denomination in Switzerland? Calvin. In which year did the euro, a symbol of European integration, come into use? Year 2002. Which institutions played a central role in knowledge and scholarship in medieval Europe? Monasteries. What Renaissance artistic technique expressed three-dimensionality in depth in objects? Vanishing point perspective. During the Industrial Revolution, the invention of the steam locomotive greatly contributed to the development of which field? Railways. Who was the leader of the socialist revolution in Cuba during the Cold War? Fidel Castro. What was the name of the racial segregation policy that lasted the longest in Africa in the late 20th century? Apartheid. In which year was the United States Declaration of Independence issued? Year 1776. In medieval Europe, what type of building most prominently symbolized the authority of the Pope? Cathedrals. The Boston Tea Party, which helped trigger the American War of Independence, was a protest against tea from which country? Britain. During the Cold War, what was the arms race between the United States and the Soviet Union to develop nuclear weapons called? Nuclear arms race. What is the main institution of the European Union responsible for making laws? The European Parliament. In Christianity, what feast commemorates the day Jesus rose from the dead after being crucified? Easter. During the Age of Exploration, which crop brought from the Americas to Europe came to be called the devil's fruit? The potato. What was the name of the large-scale massacre committed by Japan in Nanjing during its invasion of China in World War II? The Nanjing Massacre. In ancient Egypt, what was the book that recorded the journey of the soul of the dead into the afterlife? The Book of the Dead. Which emperor founded the Tang dynasty after the Sui dynasty in China? Li Yuan. In medieval Europe, what were the trade associations organized by town merchants called? Guilds. During the Age of Exploration, which explorer, backed by Spain, crossed the Pacific and reached the Philippines? Ferdinand Magellan. After India's independence, which leader was a principal figure in leading the non-aligned movement? Jawaharlal Nehru. Who founded Islam and unified the Arabian Peninsula? Muhammad. What was the route developed during the Han Dynasty in ancient China that became the main artery of trade between East and West? The Silk Road. Which leader achieved India's independence through non-violent civil disobedience? Mahatma Gandhi. Which Venetian merchant visited the Yuan dynasty in the 13th century and later wrote the Travels of the East? Marco Polo. What was the event in 1453 in which the Byzantine Empire fell to the Ottoman Empire? The fall of Constantinople. What is the name of the amendments added after the drafting of the United States Constitution to guarantee citizens' basic rights? The Bill of Rights. What was the war between Russia and Japan from 1904 to 1905 over control of Korea and Manchuria? The Russo-Japanese War. What was the nuclear war crisis between the United States and the Soviet Union in 1962 over the deployment of missiles in Cuba? The Cuba Missile Crisis. What was the war for dominance in ancient Greece fought between Athens and Sparta? The Peloponnesian War. What was the form of government in medieval Japan in which the warrior class was central? Shogunate. Which Venezuelan-born leader led the independence movements in Latin America? Simón Bolívar. Which international organization was established after World War I to maintain world peace but ultimately failed? The League of Nations. Who founded fascism in Italy and established a dictatorship? Benito Mussolini. What was the economic community that formed the basis of the European Union, EU? The European Economic Community, EEC. Which Tudor queen defeated the Spanish Armada in 1588? Elizabeth I. In which year was the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima, Japan, during World War II? Year 1945. Which ancient seafaring people of the Mediterranean used a script that became the origin of the alphabet? The Phoenicians. In which year did the Western Roman Empire fall to a Germanic mercenary leader? Year AD 476. What was the decisive battle in which William the Conqueror gained control of England? The Hastings Battle, year 1066. Who was the powerful chief minister during the reign of Louis XIII of France who strengthened royal authority? Cardinal Richelieu. On what date did the storming of the Bastille, commemorated as the beginning of the French Revolution, take place? The 14th of July year 1789. During World War I, which passenger ship was sunk by a German submarine, influencing public opinion in favor of U.S. entry into the war? The Lusitania. Which party won the Chinese Civil War and founded the People's Republic of China? Chinese Communist Party. Which socio-economic system of medieval Europe underwent major changes due to the Black Death in the 14th century? Feudalism. What is the name of the three wars fought between Rome and Carthage? Punic Wars. Which ethnic group was the main victim of the 1994 Rwandan genocide? Tutsi. Who was the French female hero who fought the English army in the 100 Years' War? Jeanne d'Arc. What was the name of the execution device used during the French Revolution? Guillotine. Which Argentine nationalist politician served as president of the country? Juan Perón. What was the name of the war fought between Israel and Arab states in 1967? Six-Day War. At which battle of the Second Punic War did Hannibal inflict a crushing defeat on the Roman army? Battle of Cannae. Which scientist defended the heliocentric theory and was tried by the Inquisition? Galileo Galilei. What was the treaty after the First Opium War in which the Qing Empire ceded Hong Kong to Britain? The Nanjing Treaty. Which Communist Party leader led the Russian October Revolution in 1917? Lenin. Which statesman led Athens during the height of its democratic politics? Pericles. What was the code of law compiled under the Byzantine Emperor Justinian called? Justinian's Code. Which ancient Greek temple is located on the Acropolis of Athens? The Parthenon. What is the 1948 war that broke out immediately after the founding of Israel commonly called? The First Arab-Israeli War. Which al-Qaeda leader was killed by a U.S. Special Forces unit in 2011? Osama bin Laden. What was the first strategic arms limitation agreement between the United States and the Soviet Union, signed in 1972, called? SALT I. Which Byzantine capital city was captured by the Fourth Crusade in 1204? Constantinople. Among the seven wonders of the ancient world, what was the name of the lighthouse of Alexandria? The Pharos Lighthouse. What was the name of the leader who established the fascist regime in Italy? Benito Mussolini. Who was the German Renaissance scientist who completed the laws of planetary motion? Kepler. Which amendment to the United States Constitution guarantees civil rights for black citizens? The 14th Amendment. In what year did Germany resume unrestricted submarine warfare, prompting the United States to enter World War I? Year 1917. In the spring and autumn period, what was the book from the state of Lu that recorded the sayings of Confucius? The Analects. What is the name of the first representative parliament in England, convened in 1295? The Model Parliament. What was the event in which the Austrian Archduke was assassinated, igniting World War I? The Sarajevo assassination. Which French thinker wrote The Social Contract and emphasized direct democracy? Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Which Tsar founded the Romanov dynasty in 17th century Russia? Mikhail Romanov. Thank you for watching until the end. We'd love to hear your feedback and historical insights in the comments. Your support helps us create even more history quizzes. Let's keep exploring together.